Hello, everybody. I am Steve Drost. With me, as always, we have Will Kaplan. Of course, me and Will, both from the Quivr CRM team. What is Quivr? We are the CRM built by financial advisors for financial advisors. Will, you've known me long enough to know that if I see a button, I really want to push it.
There's something great about that feeling, right? A little bit of anxiety. I don't know what it's going to do. I'm just going to push anyway and find out. Yeah, it's a little bit of an adventure there.
It's an adrenaline rush. Like, let's do it. And we had a question from a user that at first it kind of seemed a little simple. And it's like, oh, you didn't know that. But then we took a step back because we actually had a legitimate conversation about this at office hours. And it was all about pushing this weird little dash circle on the household page. And then it wasn't like a normal pick list. It wasn't a normal anything. It was a very unique widget that popped up, and it only let them pick like 6 or 7 options. And in short, what they were doing was changing the record type.
And we get questions about this from time to time because it's confusing. We all sort of have an intuitive understanding of like, oh, this is a client household, or this is a prospect, or this is an ex client or an ex prospect. Like, I think we understand sort of what that means, but there's some tentacles attached to this one that kind of work their way through the Salesforce, kind of the back end and the front end both, where this record type thing, whatever it is, actually has some pretty powerful functionality, and it can do some really interesting things. And understanding a little bit of like what it is and how it works, I think is valuable for our users.
I agree. And before we share our screens and we dive in and we actually show the image that this individual found, I want to take a step back and just spend 30 seconds explaining high level how the data model inside of Quivr, inside of Salesforce works. So Salesforce is, I'm going to use a big word here, just a big database. That's all it is. It's a big database. And how they elect to classify various pieces of information is in something called an object. And all an object is a classification of data. That's it. So your households, your contacts.
And Steve, the one that I think advisors immediately pick up on is when you hear us say object, think spreadsheet tab.
Exactly.
That's all it is we're talking about columns and rows in a spreadsheet, and it's all sort of just this one thing. So like a household, each row is a new household record, and each column is like, what's their address? Who lives in this household? Like, it's that type of data. And so when you kind of take a step back and get out of this like programming lingo of objects and records and stuff like that, and just think of it as like, explain this to me as if it's a spreadsheet, advisors usually just like immediately click with it.
And so that's an object. So that's one tab in the spreadsheet. I love that comparison. A record type then is when we look at that tab and we're kind of thinking, I might need more than one tab for this. The different types of data that I'm looking at within this tab, they're different enough where my columns are going to be different. I'm going to want to look at things differently. I'm going to want to treat them almost as if they're different, but in reality, they're still very comparable. This is called a record, and this is what that person found. So a record type is when, for example, the accountant that I work with and the head of a household of one of my clients, those are both people, those are both contacts, but the information that I'm going to need for the two of them is so different that I want to put them in a different bucket. I want to have a different type, a different category for these people. And that is what this person found on the household page. Will, any more to add to what a record type is?
Yeah, the metaphor that I always use for this is, imagine that you work for Baskin Robbins and your job is to make ice cream. Well, the first thing you do is you make unflavored base, right? It's just ice cream, and it doesn't have any flavor, and there's nothing in it. There's no mix-ins or anything. It's just the thing that you get that you then add flavoring to. And that vanilla or that chocolate or that bubble gum, whatever it is that you're turning this into, that's the record type. It still has a lot of the core, like there's core similarity there. There's sugar and there's, whatever you put, cream or whatever in ice cream. But like, as you start to add the flavors, you start to kind of move away from that base into unique territory. Chocolate is not the same as vanilla. Strawberry is something completely different. And so that's how I always try to give people some understanding of like, what is this thing? How does it work? You got that core similarity in a household, and like a COI might not be that different, but now we're sort of moving off into kind of unique territory where there are some differences. I'm not putting bubblegum in chocolate ice cream because like, I'm not a monster.
But you don't have a 3-year-old. My 3-year-old would definitely try that. Right here, when we look at a household right here, you can scroll down a little bit and you can see this is that odd oval circle thing that we were talking about, right? This is what that person found. This is what they clicked. And you can only pick one, two, three, four, five, six, seven different record types. And by checking a different one, we are going to have different page layouts. We're going to have different fields that present. We're going to have different large categorizations, right? We're going to treat our clients way different than we treat our COIs. So these things are so similar yet so different that we want to have their own category, their own flavor of ice cream for them. So for example, an onboarding client household, I love this one. I know many of our firms do not use this type of record. I know many of them do. But what an onboarding client household tells me is this is somebody that has said yes, but they're still in that onboarding phase, which in my opinion takes 3 to 6 months because I want to have a few meetings. And if I'm onboarding a client, I want to be able to see them completely separately, see where they are in that onboarding process. Are we doing paperwork or are we done with our second plan building meeting? I want to know what's going on. So notice if I hit this and I save the Halperts as an onboarding household, I'm going to have a few things that show up differently. One of those, for example, is the onboarding module. Now, if I go back and I change the Halperts to a client household, for example, what they were, that onboarding module, how it's set up today, and this may or may not change, but as it's set up today, that's not there anymore. So we're able to hide things, show things differently. Maybe the biggest difference we see is if we look at COIs, you'll notice that COIs are way different. I don't have an advisory team for a COI, but I do want to see all of the related parties, and I do want to see the related records, right? What estate plans is this COI, which the Halperts aren't an attorney, so they're not going to have any, but I want to see different data. So when we have record types and users, right, that do elect to customize their page layouts and make custom fields and do things like that, you have the ability to then customize the layouts and the fields for each different type of household. So if you want, for example, like we just showed you on COIs, to see every single estate plan that attorney or that law office is involved with, I want that to be displayed on COIs. I don't want that to be displayed on the Halperts when they're a client.
Yeah, and I think I mean, that's probably like the quintessential, it's like the perfect example of how you would change page layouts to accommodate different types of information that are important versus, all of my households, I kind of have to display the same stuff. And this is what I want on there versus for COI. I want to see a different set of information. Those two pages need to be laid out a little bit differently, but how do I tell the system, do this over here and do something else on this other record? Like that's how we sort of differentiate between them.
Yep. And that oval, right? That dash oval that I was clicking there, you're going to see that quite often, but it's always the same thing. It's a unique shape. The only time that shape exists is when you're changing a record type, a type. But for example, contacts. We have two record types for contacts. We have clients, prospects, and related. That's one. And then we have centers of influence. That's another. So you in the same methodology, the same functionality applies. I want to see what tax returns a CPA completed, but I want to see the social security number for my clients. So I'm able to have those different layouts, and Quivr utilizes this heavily because of that. But then go inside of the modules, meeting module. You have different record types. Is this a review meeting? Is this a one-off meeting? Is this a prospect meeting? Think about your assets and liabilities module. Is this an IRA, a Roth IRA, so a qualified account? Is this a taxable joint account? Maybe this is a mortgage. Maybe this is a car loan. All of those things that I just mentioned are balance sheet items. You want them. You maybe don't, but most of us want some of those things in there. But I'm going to need significantly different information for entering a mortgage on a rental property than I'm going to need for an IRA.
Yeah, I think, Steve, you're right. The asset and liability object is probably the example where these records look the most different. A student loan is wildly different than my Roth IRA account. And yet at the core, there's an account number, there's a primary owner, there's a household that it relates back to. Like the core, the ice cream base is the same, but the flavors now are really, really different. And like the page layouts are different. The fields that we display are different. There's a lot of change as you move between those record types. But at the same time, they are kind of, there is some core functionality that is still the same.
They're all balance sheet items. And then also, and I would argue maybe the page layouts is the most important, because imagine if we had every single field for all of the different types of assets and liabilities on one thing. I would never use it ever. But maybe the second most important thing is the functionality. So for example, a story, right, that I tell very often is I want to know in demos, I want to know if a client's life insurance policy is about to mature because like 10 years ago, I lost a client and thought I was going to get fired because I missed a term life insurance maturity. Well, just like in the assets and liabilities module, when you go to the insurance or risk management module, it has record types for life insurance. Is this a whole life, term life? What kind of policy is this? Has record types for disability, has record types for property and casualty insurance. Well, for example, most of my clients have term life. I have very few whole life, but I want to know when my term life policies are going to mature because that's when the premium's going to go from, $700 a year to 7,000 a year. So that's a very, very, very important thing for me. So I'm able to then create those automations, create those processes inside of Archer that says, tell me when this is going to happen for this record type, right? Birthday cards. I don't send birthday cards to my accountant or my attorney. I don't do that. Maybe I should. Maybe I'm not very nice, but I do send birthday cards to my clients. And record type is the cleanest way to filter that, get to that subset of people, subset of items that I want to take action on. So it's not only from a user interface or display perspective, but it's also on the what do I want to do with this data going forward. Anything to add on that squiggly little oval, Will?
It is kind of a core functionality within Salesforce. I think that, what I anticipate is users will see this and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get it. I love it. And I want to make more. And in some places making more, awesome. Like do your thing and go nuts. And we're happy to help you with that. Come to office hours. We'll talk about it. In other places, adding more can have some unintended consequences. And so like, as you get deeper into the guts of Salesforce, some of this stuff, especially with something like a record type where it kind of like, it's reaching out and it's touching a lot of different stuff, come and talk to us. Send us an email, open a ticket. Like there is, what is the quote, Steve? With great power comes great responsibility. This is one of those instances where like we are tinkering now with some stuff that has like really deep functionality within Salesforce. And so like, yes, get excited about this. It's really cool. You can do some powerful stuff. We're using it all over the place inside of Quivr, but just be mindful that you should probably talk to us first if you're thinking about making some changes here, because some of these record types, they touch some Quivr stuff too.
Yeah.
And so you just want to be mindful as you're like, getting as excited as we are about Salesforce, which like, yes, welcome to the party, but come to office hours, send us a ticket, send us an email, because this is one of those things where you can potentially get yourself into a little bit of trouble. And so just be mindful of that as you start to tinker. Like we're here to help. We want to make you successful. Come talk to us first.
And to be very honest with that, Will, we do have people come to us quite frequently about the desire for additional record types. Almost every single time, there is a way to achieve your desired outcome without a new record type. And that is our preferred way because it just keeps everything cleaner. So we'll ask you what is it? People ask us questions and we don't answer it. We just start asking questions first so we fully understand it, right? That's the advisor in us coming out, right? You want to retire at 60? Great. Why? I'm not going to tell you if you can or not. I want to understand the thought process behind it. And we do that with our users quite regularly. I would say more often than not. So we just really want to understand what business function you're trying to accomplish. Because if a record type is the best way, great, power to you. We'll explain the pros and the cons and put you down that path. But if it's not, we want to also let you know maybe a simpler or less intrusive change to the system than the record type. So you're right. Thank you for mentioning that. Record types are incredibly important. And yeah, with great power does come great responsibility. But that's a wrap for today. Yeah, that oval button, it controls record type, and record type controls almost everything in the system. But if you have more questions about this, if you're a user, get to office hours. We'll answer questions that you have. If you're not a user, that's okay. Nobody's perfect. But remember, it's not too late. You can schedule a demo, come hang out with me, come hang out with Will, and learn what Quivr can do for you live in your practice.